In the high desert, the heat can make you see things that aren't there, but it's the things you can touch that are truly terrifying. I once found a woman sitting in a cold patch of sand who looked exactly like a missing mother, except she didn't breathe and her shadow moved on its own. Most people think they're safe once they reach the highway, but some things follow you home just to practice being human in your own living room. Story 2. The Desert Echo. In August 2008, I was responding to a report of an abandoned vehicle near an old, unmarked access road. The car was a silver sedan, doors standing wide open, with a child's car seat in the back. Empty. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle, just a half-eaten sandwich on the dashboard and a cell phone lying in the footwell. The owner was a young mother named Sarah, who had been missing for 3 days, and the local community was already on edge due to a string of inexplicable livestock mutilations in the surrounding ranches. I began to track a set of footprints leading away from the car and into a deep arroyo. The tracks were strange. They started as normal sneaker prints, but every few yards, the stride would lengthen unnaturally, and the heel mark would disappear entirely, as if the person had suddenly decided to walk on their tiptoes. As the sun began to dip behind the mesas, casting long, distorted shadows, I heard a sound that made me drop my canteen. It was the sound of a child laughing, coming from a cluster of twisted juniper trees 100 yards ahead. But as I drew my sidearm and called out, the laughter didn't fade. It shifted, morphing into the perfect, mechanical mimicry of my own daughter's voice, calling me for dinner. If Sarah and her child were lost in the desert, why was the air around those trees suddenly 10 degrees colder than the rest of the canyon? The cold hit me like a physical wall as I stepped into the shadow of the junipers. I grew up in these lands. I knew that rock holds heat long after the sun goes down. Yet here, my breath was suddenly visible in the air. I pushed through the brittle branches, and that's when I saw her. Sarah was sitting on a flat rock, her back to me. She was wearing the same sundress from her missing person flyer, but it was pristine, not a speck of desert dust or a single snag from the cactus needles that had been tearing at my own uniform all afternoon. "Sarah?" I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. She didn't move. She didn't startle or turn around to see who was there. She just sat there, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice was devoid of any inflection, flat and hollow, like she was reading a script in a language she didn't understand. "The baby is fine. We are just waiting." "Waiting for what?" I asked, stepping closer. As I moved around to face her, I noticed her shadow. The sun was low, throwing long silhouettes across the sand. But Sarah's shadow wasn't, attached to her feet. It sat a few inches to the left, and while she remained perfectly still, the shadow seemed to be vibrating, its edges flickering like a flame in a draft. When I finally saw her face, I had to fight the urge to run. Her features were correct. The same nose, the same jawline, but her eyes were wrong. They didn't focus on me. They stared at a point roughly 6 inches behind my left ear, and she didn't blink. I stood there for a full 2 minutes, the desert wind howling through the canyon, and her eyelids never moved once. "Sarah, where is your daughter?" I asked, my voice shaking. She smiled then, but it was a terrifying, muscular effort. It was as if she were a puppeteer trying to remember which strings pulled the corners of the mouth. "She is learning," Sarah replied. "We are all learning to be what you want." I reached out to check her pulse, a reflex from my EMT training. The moment my fingers touched her wrist, I flinched. Her skin wasn't just cold. It felt like touching a piece of damp plastic stretched over a wooden frame. There was no pulse, no thrum of blood, no warmth, just a terrifying, absolute stillness. Suddenly a sound came from the arroyo behind us, a high-pitched, warbling cry. My tracking dog, a veteran German shepherd named Kaiser, began to howl in a way I'd never heard. He wasn't barking at a threat. He was screaming in pure, unadulterated terror. He backed away from the Sarah thing, his tail tucked so tightly against his belly, it looked painful. "Kaiser, easy," I yelled, but the dog turned and bolted back toward the patrol car, leaving me alone with her. The thing that looked like Sarah stood up. It didn't use its arms for balance. It simply levered its torso upward until it was vertical. It stood nearly half a head taller than it had appeared while sitting. "You shouldn't have come, Mason," it said, using my name even though I had never introduced myself. I didn't wait for another word. I backed away, keeping my eyes on it until I reached the edge of the juniper grove. The moment I stepped out of that cold pocket of air, I ran. I didn't look back until I reached the car. Kaiser was already in the back seat, whimpering and scratching at the floorboards. I called for backup, but by the time the sheriff and a search party arrived an hour later, the juniper grove was empty. There was no sign of Sarah or her child. The only thing they found were those strange, tiptoe footprints leading deeper into the desert until they simply vanished into the hard-packed clay of a dry lake bed. 3 months later, the case took a turn that still keeps me awake at night. A group of hikers found remains in a shallow cave 6 miles from the abandoned car. The DNA results came back a week later. It was Sarah and her daughter. But the coroner's report was the impossible part. Based on the decomposition and the state of the clothing, they had both been dead for at least 6 months. If Sarah had died 3 months before her car was even reported missing, then who was driving that sedan? Who ate the sandwich on the dashboard? And what was it that I touched in that cold grove of trees that spoke to me with my own daughter's voice? I moved away from the desert shortly after that. I live in a rainy climate now, far from the shifting sands and the long shadows of the mesas. But sometimes, when I'm walking through a quiet parking lot, I'll see a woman standing perfectly still under a street lamp. She won't be moving, she won't be breathing, and her shadow won't quite match the way she's standing. And I know without a doubt that she's just practicing. She's practicing being normal until she finds the right house to walk into. If these stories left you checking your locks tonight, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new nightmare. For more bone-chilling encounters that defy explanation, click the next video on your screen right now.